Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Stuart Allen Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for the very end of September and very beginning of October 2019. And a lot of news this week.
So much.
A lot of stories, and as you know, still coming off of our...
It's Jay.
He always gets upset when we talk about things political.
No, he just wants to give his opinion.
Yes, and I know not a lot of you, but some of you
people
have complained about his talking.
And the animals and the background
But
noise.
I can then tell you, please go to another podcast, people, because they are part of our life.
So this is us. Welcome to our world.
Yes, this is 24/7 on Noah's Ark. And anyway,
We're disturbing his nap.
Yeah, we are in front of his nap place, so he's upset. Anyway, California Representative Devin Nunes predicted on Fox News this past week that Joe Biden's campaign is likely coming to an end, all because of newly resurfaced reports about his possible misconduct in Ukraine that first originated back when Hillary Clinton was trying to make sure Biden didn't get in the race, so she was screwing him up also. The top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee made the claim to the Des Moines Register, CNN, and Mediacom poll and showed that Senator Elizabeth Warren is surging ahead. How could this be possible? Who would vote for this woman?
Well, who's claiming she's surging ahead? That's what I'd like to know.
Nobody asked me.
No,
Well, they
that's
asked people
me.
in Des Moines. There's only 5 people that live there.
True.
So that's why they asked her. And they said that she now has 22% of the voters surveyed. That means they surveyed 22 people. And he has only 20%. It's over a year away. These polls are meaningless, absolutely meaningless. The only poll, maybe the day before the election, maybe has some value.
Maybe.
But
Nobody,
even last time, it didn't.
You know,
It showed 90% was Hillary, and she lost.
listen to me. I have lived for many, many years, and I have
You have?
never, ever been included in any of these polls.
Nobody ever asked me either.
Ever. Not even one.
Never. Anyway, and you know, this big fake stories about the whistleblowers, I'm going to get to that now. The allegations that President Trump acted inappropriately during a July 25th phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will ultimately backfire and shine a light on Biden's own possible misconduct. And CNN acknowledged that the whistleblower had no first-hand knowledge of the call. Then how could he whistleblow on something he knew nothing? It's like, I'm going to tell you what you're going to have for lunch tomorrow. You don't even know. Okay? And a top Ukrainian official actually defended Trump's actions. Trump and Nunes emphasized that Biden recently bragged about pressuring Ukraine to fire its top prosecutor when he was vice president. So he was even worse. At the time, the prosecutor was probing a company closely linked to Biden's son, Hunter. Who names a kid Hunter? Anyway, it turns out the whistleblower is actually a CIA deep state agent who never even read the phone call transcript. So in other words, Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff called him up and said, hey, make believe that you read the thing and make say that it's illegal. That's what it is. And speaking of Adam Schiff, his real name is Adam Schiff, but I think we need to change the last 2 F's to a T. That's his real name. And he acknowledged Shifty that he made up parts of the phone call transcript.
Dear, terrible.
He admitted when he delivered his opening statement at a much-watched TV hearing with top U.S. intelligence officers. Mr. Schiff, I wouldn't even call him Mr. He's a California Democrat and chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, of which he has none, was part in parody. This is a serious thing. He's a parody. In his opening statement, Mr. Schiff said that Trump asked Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky for fabricated dirt on former Vice President Joe Biden and said Mr. Trump threatened to make the same request that Mr. Zelensky 8 times, and both quotes are not in the transcript. So
This is
they
a
were made
problem, a
up.
big problem.
Schiff said, the transcript reads like a classic organized crime shakedown. Well, you ought to know about those things.
Yes.
Short of its rambling character and in not so many words, this is the essence of what the president communicates. We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have, he's saying to Ukraine. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. They probably don't even know what that word means. I hear what you want.
Do you know what that means?
Sometimes I do. I have a favor I want from you, though. I'm going to say this only 7 times. Why would he say this?
Times?
Janet, I'm going to tell you 14 times what I want for dinner. Anyway, it's just about, I don't even read it, such stupidity. Republicans earlier this year asked Adam Schiff to resign, accusing him of putting out falsehoods about the Russia investigation, which was also fake. And my opinion, that, of course I said, Adam Shifty should just drop the F's and make them T. And look at his eyes when he's...
Well, that's why they call him that.
No, he's like not normal. He's not normal eyes, and he's programmed and quite diluted. And so is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is always talking like this. She's talking like this, and she always wears something that means on her necklace. Anyway, they will get their day, and they will be executed for treason one day soon. And now, also, positive things. The Trump administration this past week signed an asylum cooperative agreement with El Salvador that would mean migrants who pass through that country need to first sought and been denied asylum there before continuing to the United States. And that's similar to what they signed in July in Guatemala, and also similar to what they signed the agreement with Mexico, and they also signed with Honduras. So since then, there's been a big numbers drop of illegals and criminals coming to the border. Now, at the United Nations, President Trump warned world leaders about the specter of socialism, calling it one of the most serious challenges facing the nations. And that's true. He called it, he said, it's the wrecker of nations and destroyer of societies. He said this to the United Nations General Assembly in New York. He continued, events in Venezuela remind us all that socialism and communism are not about justice. They are not about equality. They are not about lifting up the poor. And they are certainly not about the good of the nation. Socialism and communism are about one thing only, power for the ruling class. And that's true. And I ought to know because my family was the biggest communist in the Soviet Union. And anybody knows about it, I know. Trump repeated his pledge that the United States would never be a socialist country. Well, it's almost there. Trump repeatedly criticized the Democrats for embracing radical socialism. This is just true in the United States. He denounced a wide range of proposals by the Democrats, such as open borders, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, and calling them an extreme, destructive, and dangerous agenda. I agree, because it would bankrupt the United States for the rest of eternity. Trump said in a speech to the United Nations that socialism and communism killed 100 million people in the last century. My uncle alone killed over 2 million. And he condemned the brutal oppression of people in Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And I know, because I've been to all those places. The dictator Maduro, president of Venezuela, is a Cuban puppet protected by Cuban bodyguards and hiding from his own people. And that's also true. He says, if you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Today, with one clear voice, the United States of America calls upon the nations of the world to end religious persecution. And Trump drew criticism, this is now getting to the good part, for scheduling his meeting on religious freedom during the Climate Change Summit hosted by the United Nations Secretary General. He attended the climate summit for 15 minutes. I couldn't take a minute of that crap.
Well, I think he did it just to show things, show.
Before leaving for his own meeting, booked at a separate conference room at the United Nations. And by the way, the United Nations is a socialist communist program organization. So that's why, whatever they address, like people say, oh, Zionism, who said that? United Nations. Oh, who? The Arab nations and the communist nations. You believe in those things? Anyway, here's what we'll get a lot of criticism, but it's the truth. Laura Ingraham from the news mocked 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg Monday by comparing her to the homicidal child cult in Stephen King's Children of the Corn.
I have a bunch of this.
Oh my gosh. The implication is, of course, that to ensure the future, everyone must sign on to these globalist solutions, Ms. Ingram said on her Fox News show. Cede control of our economy, our way of life, our way of transport, how many children you want to have, and if we don't go along, we will be punished by our own children.
That sums that up.
Well, the show then cut to Ms. Thunberg's United Nations speech telling the room, quote, young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all the future generations are upon you. And if you choose to say less, I say we will never forgive you, like they really give a damn. And we will not let you get away with this, with you and what army. The world is waking up and change is coming whether you like it or not. Well, Greta, listen to me very carefully. No. Most young people don't even know the city where they live. They can't even find it on a map, let alone know about global warming or climate change. Neither do they even know the temperature of the moment they're in right now. Okay, so really. Ms. Ingram then played a clip from the 1984 version of Children of the Corn, where the murder cult leader says, quote, a test is at hand, the final test. Well, that's kind of what Greta said, didn't she? Hours before her monologue, Fox News apologized after a guest on their show called Ms. Thunberg, quote, a mentally ill Swedish child. She is, and my family and friends in Sweden say this. The Swedish people are ashamed of her. During a segment on the Fox News, The Story with Martha McCallum, the Daily Wire's Michael Knowles, blasted Ms. Thunberg, who has autism, and accused the international left and her parents of exploiting her. And I will be making a statement about this. The 16-year-old is an expert, we are told. Greta Thunberg told Americans, you are not trying hard enough. Evidently, Greta wants us to travel by boats to and fro Europe. Greta is a media-created phenomenon. What the media does not tell you who is behind this child. If you check out her photos, and this is on the links that you will see, her behind young Greta being escorted around the country by her handler, far-left activist Louisa Marie Neubauer. On the photos behind her, you see Louisa Marie Neubauer, her handler. She's a member of ONE Foundation, managed by Bono, your friend Bill Gates, and George Soros. Now, let me tell you about Louisa Marie Neubauer. She's a 23-year-old German climate protection activist. In Germany, she is one of the main organizers of the school strike for climate movement, inspired by Greta Thunberg. She supports the implementation of Agenda 2030 in Germany and a climate policy that is compatible with the Paris agreements. Neubauer is a member of the Alliance 90, the Greens, and the Green Youth, all financed by who? George Soros. Now, this may be a little political, but I have a statement I am going to make to the parents of Greta Thunberg. May I do this?
I don't care. I have a bunch of information too, but I'll give
this
mine
has to
later.
be done, and I don't care if politically appropriate or not. Till föräldrarna till Greta Thunberg, var är du? Hur kan du låta din 16-åriga dator med psykiska problem tas utomlands av hanterare i veckorten familjeövervakning? Hur mycket betalades du och av vem? Du borde skämmas över för att låta ditt skadade barn användas av globalister för att främja ungärningar hos allmänheten. Visst kommer du att betala för din brott. And that can be translated by the Swedish people. Now, continuing. More about the climate issues. a highly qualified and experienced climate modeler with impeccable credentials, has rejected the unscientific basis of the doom-mongering over reported climate crisis. His work is not yet familiar in the United States, but that will change. He wrote in the Australian site Quadrant, I think it says, Quadrant, and Tony Thomas introduces the English-speaking world to the truth-telling of Dr. Mototaka Nakamura from Japan. He is a top-level oceanographer and meteorologist who is prepared to cry nonsense on the global warming crisis and to the climate modelers, but he also says that those whose year 2100 foreboding of 4 degrees Celsius warming have set the world to spending in United States dollars $1.5 trillion to combat carbon dioxide emissions. Dr. Mototaka Nakamura, from 1990 to 2014, he worked on cloud dynamics and forces mixing atmospheric and ocean flows on medium to planetary scales. His bases are, or were, MIT, the Doctor of Science and Meteorology, Georgia Institute of Technology, Goddard Space Flight Center, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Duke and Hawaii Universities, and the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, and he's published 20 climate papers on fluid dynamics. So I think he knows what he's talking about a bit. And Nakamura says that he accused the orthodox scientists of data falsification by adjusting previous temperature data to increase the apparent warming, which I told you, they just keep the July numbers through October. The global surface mean temperature change data no longer have any specific value and are nothing except a propaganda tool to the public. He continues, the models have become useless pieces of junk or worse, and here are the reasons. These models completely lack critically important climate processes and feedbacks and represent some other critically important climate processes and feedbacks in grossly distorted manners to the extent that makes these models totally useless for any meaningful climate prediction. And other things include 1. Ignorance about large and small-scale ocean dynamics. 2. A complete lack of meaningful representations of aerosol changes that generate clouds. 3. A lack of understanding of drivers of ice albedo, or reflecting the lights from the sun. Without a reasonably accurate representation, it is impossible to make any meaningful predictions of climate variations and changes in the middle and high latitudes and thus the entire planet. 4. Inability to deal with water vapor elements. And 5. Arbitrary tunings, or fudges as he calls it, of key parameters that are not understood. And about carbon dioxide changes, he says, I want to point out a simple fact, that it is impossible to correctly predict even the sense or direction of a change of a system when the prediction tool lacks and or grossly distorts important nonlinear processes, feedbacks in particular, and are present in the actual. He's just trashing the whole climate change propaganda. And he says the real or realistically simulated climate system is far more complex than an absurdly simple system simulated by the toys that have been used by climate predictions to date, and will be insurmountably difficult for those naive climate researchers who have zero or very limited understanding of geophysical fluid dynamics. He's really letting them have it. I understand geophysical fluid dynamics just a little, making a joke there, but enough to realize that the dynamics of the atmosphere and oceans are absolutely critical facets of the climate system if one hopes to ever make any meaningful prediction of climate variation. And so the question then is, who are you going to believe? A superbly qualified Japanese scientist or a Swedish teenager with mental issues? What would you do? And there's more.
More?
Over 500 scientists and professionals in climate and related fields have sent a European climate declaration to the Secretary General of the United Nations asking for a long overdue, high-level, open debate on climate change, begging the United Nations to keep hysteria from obscuring the facts. The scientists underscored the importance of not rushing into enormously expensive climate action before fully ascertaining the facts, like the Japanese scientists said. They said, quote, "There is no statistical evidence that global warming is intensifying hurricanes, floods, drought, and such like natural disasters, or making them more frequent," they said. However, carbon dioxide mitigation measures are as damaging as they are costly. So what they want to fix it with is more damaging. For instance, wind turbines kill birds and bats. Palm oil plantations destroy the biodiversity of the rainforest. There is no climate emergency. Therefore, there is no cause for panic and alarm. We strongly oppose the harmful and unrealistic net zero carbon dioxide policy proposed for 2050. They continue, in particular, the scientists criticize the general circulation models of climate on which international policy is currently founded as, quote, unfit for their purpose, unquote. Therefore, they said, it is cruel as well as imprudent to advocate the squandering of trillions on the basis of results from such immature models, they said. Current climate policies pointlessly, grievously undermine the economic system, putting lives at risk in countries denied access to affordable, continuous electrical power. Thank God for these 500 scientists. So, will the UN or world leaders pay attention?
They can do whatever they want.
And in support of all this, well, it's not even a week into the autumn season. Parts of the northern United States and Canada prairies are facing a major snowstorm that officials said could be historic in September. Is that global warming? Accumulation of snow will be measured in feet. And the biggest impact is the strong winds, record-challenging cold, it'll also be dangerous. It will accumulate in cities like Calgary and Lethbridge, Alberta, Regina, Saskatchewan, and Great Falls, Butte, and Missoula, Montana, and substantial amount of snow is forecast for Glacier National Park and Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Snowfall in Missoula has the chance to be record-setting, and in fact they haven't even seen snow in September for 36 years, and the biggest snowfall they had was 1934, was only 1.5 inches, and now they'll have 2 feet.
Wow.
That's global warming.
They're going to have to close things down.
Yeah, they're going to have to shovel all that warming on their roads. The first day of fall in Arizona brought rain, wind, tornado, and snow in Arizona. In Flagstaff, snow fell 2 to 3 inches per hour already in September. So, as we also know, snow fell this week in the mountains around Sochi, where our little puppies come from. Snowed in the Alps, Australia, the Andes, the Himalayas, and all during summer season. Now, remember Trinidad and Tobago when we were there? It was not so pleasant.
Well, there wasn't much there.
Well, it's going to be less now. You know why? Because residents living near the Piparo mud volcano in Trinidad and Tobago reported they heard a loud explosion on September 21st and 22nd, raising fears of a volcano eruption, a mud volcano. Cracks are appearing across roads and homes. Residents have already self-evacuated because nobody evacuated.
Where are they going to go to?
Right.
Just
And it's still not clear what's taking place, but cracks are appearing across the roads, some homes already damaged, and residents say there is a high sulfur scent in the air. That's what,
Obama.
well, they said about him in the
About
United
demons.
Nations. And from your home country, researchers have discovered an active fault line on Mount Hood that could potentially trigger a 7.2 magnitude earthquake, devastating communities as far west as Portland. So the Pacific Northwest is in big danger. And then I just have a couple of interesting stories about BBC. BBC, of course, is taxed from the British propaganda service. And they're facing criticism. You know why? Because they're teaching children that there are over 100 genders and that those who disagree can be jailed. Did you know?
Oh, that part I didn't hear.
Yeah, they said that they're peddling it to primary school kids ages 9 to 12, as an educational teach video series known as The Big Talk.
Well, I just reported last week about them teaching the little ones how to touch themselves.
Yes, well, according to experts, including the American College of Pediatricians, they said that teaching transgender propaganda to children is child abuse. That's the smartest thing I've heard out of the United States. Even worse is normalizing the impersonation of the opposite gender, which increasingly is causing confused children to seek out irreversible surgical mutilation of their genitals and hormone regimens.
And like they said, that whoever's doing that should be prosecuted.
This is what the BBC told the children. You know, there are many genders, identities, and a teacher tells a child in one of the videos, quote, we know that we have got male and female, but there are over 100, if not more, gender identities now. Really? Where did they come from all of a sudden? Here's the answer, of course. In reality, there are only two genders, male and female, and every strand of an individual's DNA testifies to that fact. The BBC wants children to believe that only the ignorant disagree, and that they may be jailed if they publicly refuse to go along. So hopefully, Boris will change this nonsense and bring Britain back to its former degree of high mentality and elegance that used to take. You know, when I was a child, Britain was so posh, and now it's a sewer.
Posh.
Britain is a sewer. And I like this story, and this might be part of my next book. You know, how many Oreo cookies have been sold in the world? Oreos. Over 500 billion.
I'm glad to know that fact.
And if you were to stretch them out with the Oreo cookies, it would go around the world 341 times.
I'm so happy.
But did you notice that hidden on the Oreos are Knights Templar symbology? You knew that?
I knew that.
Yes. The design of the Oreo, the current design, was formulated in 1952 by secret cookie designer. I didn't know they were secret cookie designers, who may have been affiliated with the Templars. And you can see above the circle, the link will be on here for you to see, the word Oreo has a cross with two bars, which is known as the Cross of Lorraine, which was carried by the Knights Templars into the Crusades. And there are exactly 12 Templar cross patterns in a circle with 12 dots and 12 dashes. Now, the word Oreo, or eo. First word, or, is Hebrew for light and can mean dawn. And the second, eo, is a Greek word which also means dawn. So it's a reference to the fallen angels who are called the watchers. Every time you eat an Oreo cookie,
Well, it looks like an eye.
well, and you know, the Templar symbology of the Oreo cookie and name are dedicated to the morning star, or dawn, star of the morning. And of course, Jesus called himself bright morning star. And you may remember, it's in, I think, my latest book about the Templars.
This one is, I think, had the Templar history.
One of their main purposes was to protect the descendants of Mary Magdalene and Christ, and the families associated with Mary Magdalene and Christ, who started corporations in the Western world in modern time, used these symbols to identify themselves.
Well, even the Waldensians, as you know, use symbols. So symbols are kind of like a secret to the universe.
So many symbols related to Templars, Mary Magdalene, and Christ
All kinds of things.
are in daily use products, and you can read about them in my books.
Yeah. So I have a few stories that are probably going to dovetail with some of the things you had to say. But the first thing I wanted to mention about Hillary Clinton supporting the impeachment process.
That's funny.
It is, of Donald Trump, claiming that Trump has betrayed our country. And
Really?
Yes. And what was interesting, even her daughter Chelsea got into the fray and was saying some nasty things.
Wait till the truth comes out about them.
But the very interesting thing, which I always continue to tell you, is on that level, they are all related in some way. So keep your eye open. But what's interesting is Trump actually fired back on her comment.
Of course.
And he said that he told reporters it's possible that copies of tens of thousands of Clinton's famous deleted emails might reside on a server in Ukraine.
Not maybe. That means they are.
Yes.
And so she's going to be singing a different tune very shortly.
Now they're claiming, and remember I've been telling about the number 3, which I'll talk about some more, but But Clinton and her lawyers deleted 33,000, there's your threes, 33,000 emails rather than turn them over to Congress. And then she said it was about wedding plans and yoga classes. So Trump says
funny.
she gets a subpoena from the United States Congress and she deletes them, and then said, I remember, oh well, they had to do with my daughter's wedding and yoga.
Okay, we'll just go along with that.
Yeah, so Trump says she does a lot of yoga, right? 33,000 emails about the wedding and yoga. I don't think so.
She doesn't look like she does yoga.
That's Trump.
She looks like she eats yogurt.
Yeah. And then moving along to your friend Greta.
Oh, my friend Greta.
Your
She needs a
friend
smack in the
Greta.
head.
Now, there's a man named Dinesh D'Souza, and he posted online, I'm sure most people have seen it by now, an Aryan poster girl
Yeah, I saw
that looks almost identical
It
to
is.
Greta.
Yeah.
She was, and he says that children, notably Nordic white girls with braids and red cheeks, were often used in Nazi propaganda.
That's true.
He said it looks that like the left is still learning its game from an earlier left in the 1930s. Now, she made headlines, as you had mentioned, across the globe, and they're saying she, this little 16-year-old girl, inspired millions of people across the 150 countries to take to the streets for global strike for climate. Now, no one child does that. There's nobody here in the United States that they've pulled up. There's nobody. So this person has been manufactured for her theatrical performances.
But I want you to look at her name. Greta Thunberg. Greta, big Thun, noise, Berg, mountain. She's a big noise mountain.
Okay. So this man goes on to say that, let's see where we are. He mentions Paul Joseph Goebbels, a Nazi politician and Reich Minister of Propaganda, who is the one who used these young women and their propaganda things. And then when she goes on to talk about telling the activist, you stole my dreams and my childhood, there are also memes on Facebook about children, real children, who are digging
starving,
and working and sewing in factories.
First of all, she's 16. She already had her childhood. It was stolen from her. And second of all, you know, we've all had dreams that have been taken away over the years. That's life.
16.
That's life,
my
Greta
point.
dear.
She's 16. And then I also had to mention here, which you also talked about, the pastors praising Trump for skipping the UN panel on imaginary climate crisis for a real problem of religious persecution.
Exactly correct.
Yes. So he talked about how the president, this group of pastors are saying how that the president is working on advancing religious freedom, and says that studies show that countries that embrace and protect religious freedom have greater social and economic stability, which will benefit America in the long run. And that Trump has made this a big part of his platform since the campaign trail. He said religious freedom is not granted by government, it is gifted to us by God. And you had mentioned in your speech about your talk about Laura Ingraham talking about Greta Thunberg. They also talked about the Michael Knowles. He was the one who mentioned that she was mentally ill. And then
She is.
Fox apologized for what was said.
You know, you have to apologize if you wear a cotton shirt because it's racist.
Yeah.
You know, it's stupidity.
And then Greta Thunberg also has supposedly, this again, this 16-year-old girl out of nowhere has filed a lawsuit against France. Right?
And so let me ask that. How can this 16-year-old pipsqueak with mental illness speak to United Nations, speak to Congress of the United States, who set this up?
And organize,
George Soros.
Organize 150 countries.
Please, she can't even tie her shoelaces.
Walk out of all the children on Fridays.
The girl is not capable of doing anything.
Yeah, and filing a lawsuit in which she accuses 5 countries of not taking climate change action.
What would happen if you filed a lawsuit?
They would laugh me out
It
of
would
the...
be like, no, like, oh, bye.
Right. Nobody would even notice.
Right.
So where did she come from?
That's why I say to her parents again in Swedish, var är du?
Yeah. So Piers Morgan, which is interesting because that's all. It's interesting to see who is aligning with who. You know, who's having their picture taken with who. Blah blah. So Piers Morgan said that he called her Grading Greta is a vulnerable young drama queen.
I say regretta.
Who should go back to school and stop terrifying a generation of kids.
She's making children miss school.
But he claims that climate change is real, right?
Well, that's because it's not global warming. Ice Age is coming.
Well, they don't want you to know that.
Well, look out the window in the Northwest and in the Alps.
Yeah, and then of course we all saw the picture of her video footage that she had, her enraged face when Trump walked into the UN. And then they go on to talk about this. Piers Morgan talks about how she has Asperger syndrome, and so, which is a form of autism that she calls her superpower. And he says that she's made her entire generation think they're about ready to die, but yet she doesn't have any answers for what they're going to do.
But she also makes them think that having mental disturbance is a good thing.
I've talked about the threes. She became a Trident 3, a Trident eco-warrior, pressurizing her family to become vegans, drive electric cars, and stop flying. So a little girl's going to do this to their family.
Right.
Again, I don't think so.
No, unless George Soros paid them $5 billion. Okay.
Now, we both posted on our Facebook page a little video of her mother walking. If
She
you haven't
looks like a
seen
winner.
that, apparently her mother is a well-known Swedish singer who entered the Eurovision Song Contest in 2009, and her father, Svante, is an actor.
Svante. That's a Swedish name.
Well, that's what they said. So, and then apparently, coincidentally, her mother has written a book about her family, and her father says she doesn't like missing school, but she can sit at home and be really unhappy or protest and be happy. So the issue is, this is a 16-year-old girl. You're supposed to be directing their activities.
First of all, in the EU and in the United States, missing school like that is illegal.
Yeah, and so now she's
And the
missing
parents
school.
would be brought up on charges.
Unless they can call her a dropout. Now
Not
then,
at 16, I don't think.
I don't know.
Not in the EU.
But then he goes on, Piers Morgan, to say he interviewed Trump in London in June. I pressed Trump about whether he believes in climate change, and Trump replied, quote, I believe there's change in weather, and I think it changes both ways. Don't forget, it used to be called global warming. That wasn't working. Then it was climate change. Now it's extreme weather.
Right, he's right.
Okay. And then the other thing about our friend Greta is
Not
that
my friend.
she also was shown speaking to Justin Trudeau.
Another jerk.
But the point is, this is a
Was he wearing
quote-unquote,
blackface?
a 16-year-old girl from supposedly nowhere leading the world. This doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah, I want to go speak to Justin and let him know what I think of him.
Now here's this. This has been so interesting because I'm following this Greta story. This is another story which at first I ignored, but it caught my attention, and I began to realize it's out there all the time. So it made me question Greta. Is Greta really a child? And is Greta really who she says? Like, look at the name. This story is about an Indiana mother who adopted a 6-year-old Ukrainian girl with dwarfism.
There's Ukraine again.
Yep. Now, they were told that she was 6 years old, and so it was an emergency adoption. I don't know what
How
that
could that
means.
be?
I don't know what that means. But so they went down to Florida. This is a couple from Indiana. They adopted this girl. And after they adopted her, and the mother's was washing her, she noticed that she had full pubic hair, and she had her teeth, and she wasn't growing, and she had the body of not a 6-year-old girl. So she began to question. She had supposedly only been in the U.S. for 2 years. She had no accent.
Well, how did she get here if she wasn't already
This
adopted?
is the issue. And so they actually had some people from the Ukraine come and talk to her. The girl didn't understand the language. She couldn't describe her country. So the mother took this girl to a doctor to see if she could determine exactly how old this girl was. And they did bone density tests, and they determined that the child was really an adult masquerading as a child.
An evil dwarf.
Yes, and that this child, a young woman, had a lot of psychological issues. She was jumping out of moving cars. She was smearing blood on mirrors. She said she was doing things you could never imagine a child was doing. She was diagnosed with severe psychological illness. She had...
The heck did she be up for adoption?
Well, somebody obviously, I don't know what they paid, but she said that this young girl was trying to poison them in their sleep.
They killed them.
Yes, they had to hide sharp objects. It goes on and on. So long story short, the state of Indiana finally declared this girl an adult. And with that said, because of all the problems, these adoptive parents tried to help her get established, and they went to Canada for some other opportunities for another child. So then they were charged with child abandonment.
Even though she's 22 years old.
Even though the state changed her birth certificate to say that she was 22 years old. Then this went on for a while. Now she disappeared. They can't find her.
The
dwarf. So now a Christian couple, have adopted this child, tried to reverse the birth certificate, and the first set of adoptive parents said, fought it in court, and so they didn't get it overturned. But they still, the state of Indiana is still prosecuting them, and the woman says, I'm being charged by the state of Indiana for crimes against a child when the state of Indiana has determined multiple times that Natalia was an adult.
But that doesn't make sense.
And now, they turned themselves in. Now they're saying that they could face conviction for dumping a disabled adult. It just goes on and on. So
who did they adopt it from? That's who's guilty.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in this story, and because they're running this story concurrently with this one on Greta Thunberg, it makes me think Greta's not 16 years old.
Maybe not.
She could be 30. She could be even 32 by the time
maybe her parents are not her parents, and that's why
right.
they just let her go.
That's right. There's a lot, and the name, it could be a fake name. Remember you reported on that story about the people that tried to shoot down Trump's plane, remember? And we found out that it was some guy who, his name belonged to a battleship. Remember all that story?
And if I'm not mistaken, this is the same Greta, a couple of years ago, who stopped a plane leaving Stockholm that was deporting someone to Middle East, and because she said it was racism, but the man was a criminal, rapist or pedophile murderer or somebody, and she stopped his deportation.
Supposedly. So this doesn't happen in real life. This is a show. So the fact that they're running both these stories, they'll do one and the other, one and the other, one and the other, is they're telling you this is not a little girl. And if you look at this picture of this dwarf, she does not look like a little girl. Only one thing they said is she couldn't walk. So when they first got her, the first couple, and they took her to the beach, and she wanted to be carried to the ocean, and they said, well, we're tired, just give us a couple of minutes. The little girl, the girl got up, ran into the ocean all on her own. After them being told, and she telling them she couldn't walk. So a lot of weird stuff.
That's like a really weird science fiction movie.
And that's what this woman says. It's a terrible thing for these people, but they're running these two stories concurrently, so pay attention. And then in Long Island...
I know that place.
Connecticut, is that how you say it?
Very good.
All right. Connecticut School Security, Long Island, New York, went door to door on the evening of September 19th, serving letters to 150 homes of unvaccinated children. Apparently, these security people arrived in marked cars with yellow flashing lights, brightly shining at night, and they were uniformed in yellow jackets.
Like in Paris.
In yellow jackets, yeah. And even we just watched the show, the yellow jackets. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, so these students were served. It's not illegal not to be vaccinated. You just have to have everything, in order. And apparently, this was a clear violation of the HIPAA law because now all your neighbors know who's vaccinated and not vaccinated. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out. These unvaccinated children still went to school, but lots of stuff going on with the vaccinations, which are all scare tactics. Now, this is interesting about the Jewish election.
The Israeli
one. The multiple Jewish sources point to Israel's election impasse as the gateway to the Messiah, which is exactly what I had said in one of our last podcasts. In June, Breaking Israel News published an article citing a 40-year-old prediction by Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri.
I just did a segment on him.
The most famous Kabbalistic mystic in Israel until his death in 2006.
He was 108 years old when he passed.
Yeah, according to an eyewitness, he predicted that the Messiah will be revealed following an election stalemate in Israel.
Aha.
So at a small gathering, he was asked when the Messiah will come, and he said, when there will be elections, but there will not be a government. Okay? There's also, this article tells several other prophecies, but there's one book with they are calling it a startling section that says,
yes.
Did you read it? On the eve of the fifth cycle of 1,000 years, the year 5780 is a year of fixing. There will be no government in Israel for an extended period, and the different camps will fight and argue a great deal without any conclusion this way or the other. Then on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the side of holiness will battle the side of darkness in heaven until God himself and his hosts will decide the issue.
Aha, so soon coming.
And he says, that's all I can say about this issue. I have sworn to not reveal any more secrets.
Because he's dead. But
He's
anyway,
dead now.
I have the whole book about him and all his information, and we talked about it in the September class, and it'll be in my next book.
Yeah, so very fascinating. So
he was actually born in Baghdad.
So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in this coming election. And I didn't take the article, but I saw it about, is it Iran that has the largest growing?
Iran has the largest growing Christian population of any Muslim country. And the Iranian people are becoming Christian and supporting Israel against their own government.
So that's kind of interesting. More interesting things going. And
This is what I had predicted a long time ago.
Now this to me is totally a bizarre Pope speech. I don't know if you saw this
All
one or
his
not.
speeches are bizarre.
This went beyond bizarre.
Not possible.
This particular speech, which he gave to the Dicastery for Communication in the Vatican,
What the heck is that?
he calls for people to, quote, give up using adjectives.
Well, that's not nice.
I am allergic to these words.
No, he's allergic to humans and he needs to be exterminated.
He hit out at the culture of adjectives and adverbs. He hailed the use of nouns, said the word Christian should be used alone. Why say authentically Christian? It is Christian. The mere fact of the noun Christian, I am Christ, is strong. It is an adjective noun, yes, but it is a noun. The communicator must make people understand the weight of the reality of nouns that reflect the reality of the people.
Look, he's
Isn't this is bizarre. Well, somebody else writes his speech.
Obviously.
This is a mission of communication, to communicate with reality without sweetening with adjectives or adverbs.
So he wants to change the language. First he wanted to change the Lord's Prayer, now he wants to change the language.
Oh, maybe that's it. Let us learn to call people by their name as the Lord does with us and to give up using adjectives. Is that a bizarre speech or what?
I think he needs to go.
Well, somebody wrote it for some reason. It's got to be some code in here with some kind of thing. So we have to watch these things because they're telling us what they're doing. We just have to figure it out. And then he went on, the next one, okay, it makes a little bit more sense, but it's obviously what they're doing. Another speech, which he gave for executives from Silicon Valley.
Oh.
He warned about AI could lead to new barbarism by manipulating views of millions of people, which that's already being done.
So
Nothing new.
can Orthodox Catholicism.
Yes, so like I said, if he points it at them, nobody looks at him. But the point is that makes more sense. But this adjectives, noun, adverb thing makes absolutely no sense to me. And then Meghan Markle, of course, they're doing just a little bit. They're of course doing this tour of Africa, and they're making big deals about how she's not wearing her glitzy things. But in Africa, they'll kill. So she's not wearing her 160,000.
Sure, they're not getting anywhere near her.
They're not. She's not wearing her 160,000 pound engagement ring. She's not wearing that. Not dollars. They use pounds.
Yeah. But she's wearing maternity clothes
and jeans, lots of jeans. So the reason I'm mentioning her. And I hadn't mentioned this one before, but I had talked about it loosely, about her. Her nephew was arrested for wandering around Hollywood while high on drugs. Mm-hmm. He was naked, shouting gibberish, and only wearing a small tail around his waist.
I do that every day.
He's her nephew by way of her half-brother, Thomas Markle Jr. Now, Thomas Markle Jr., operates a cannabis farm and business, which he launched in 2018.
Isn't that Oregon?
I don't know where it is. I'm not sure if it's in Oregon. But it's a potent strain of pot called Markle Sparkle and a hybrid cannabis strain called Archie Sparky.
I love it. I love that
So
guy.
she's in the news for this. So that's what I want you to think about.
I hope it aggravates her.
I hope so, but I don't think she cares. Anyway, and then my number 3. So I just put a few because, like I said, it goes on and on and on about the number 3s. But these are all interesting things. So there were 3 Navy sailors that were assigned to the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft who killed themselves
I heard about that.
in 1 week.
And that's not the first time.
No. And how about the Iowa pig farmer who impaled his wife on a corn rake 3 times?
How could you do that?
And his name was Todd Mullis. Todd means death. They're recreating Three's Company, a very popular television series from the 60s, 70s. Now this one, who cares? Kyra Kennedy finally returns to Instagram more than 3 years after her dad banned her from the app for bad behavior. She's 24 years old.
Now I can sleep at night knowing that.
So that's not going to happen. So for whatever reason, they're putting out this 3 years things. And a mother whose 3 young children who were killed in 2015, they showed her putting flowers on their graves of the 3 children. So this is the 3.
Why is that news?
Right. That's because they want to put this 3. Every time you see the 3, it's in uppercase, all spelled out. Mm-hmm. Number of unmarried couples living together in the U.S. has tripled over the past 3 decades. 3 out of 10 people diagnosed with mosquito-borne EEE virus in Massachusetts have died. 3 E's, triple E. Serial rapist who escaped conviction 3 times is sentenced to 35 years. Boy 11 steals his brother's car and drives 3 hours to meet a man he's been chatting with on social media. There's a bizarre worm discovered in California that can survive 500 times the lethal dose of arsenic and has 3 sexes.
Oh, that would be the governor.
And the water it lives in is 3 times saltier than the sea. So all 3. Baby girl born with 4 legs and 3 hands after 2 triplets become conjoined. And a mom gives birth to miracle identical triplets despite 200 million to 1 odds. Then the last one I'm going to tell you about is a talented trio will reprise their roles in Jurassic World 3. So
I want to see that one.
Yeah, with 333 every time, everywhere you go. And so just pay attention. Remember 3, then this thing in Israel, the 3 elections, they're building up the 3rd temple. Mind control, they imprint you 3 times.
And I am in communication with people in Israel and Jordan about all of this.
So it's all, like I said, this 3 stuff is just triplets, triplex, trios, it's just everywhere. Okay.
And actually in Turkey. A lot of stuff going on in Turkey.
Yeah. Mattel has now released a gender-neutral doll. And it's just, again, one of these weird things that really shouldn't have to be talked about. So the gender-neutral doll, the lips are not too full, the eyelashes not too long and fluttery, the jaw not too wide, and it goes on, so that the children who play with it is not going to affect their sense of identity and gender. You know, the kids are going to assign stuff one way or another. That's what kids do. So they play, and I know when our boys were little, you know, they went and visited with girls. They played with all their little girl toys, and the girls came to our house and they played with the boy toys.
They
did.
Yeah, they did. I remember that.
Yeah, they played with their trucks and their things, and then our boys went to the girls' houses and they had dolls and they had sinks, and you know, they played all kinds of things with them. So kids don't care.
I went to the girls' house, but they wouldn't let me in.
No, the only people who care are the adults who are overthinking things way too far. So the kids don't care. If there's something to play with, they'll play. If it's a stick, they're going to play with it. Grass, a flower, a bug. Kids play, period. So it's just stupid. University of Edinburgh is accused of blatant racism for hosting an equality conference where white people are banned from asking questions.
That's not very Scottish.
The Q&A event, which is called Resisting Whiteness 2019,
What?
will bar Caucasian guests from speaking.
This was in Edinburgh.
There will be 2 safe spaces, one of which white people cannot enter.
That's racism.
That's horrible.
And so if they had that for banning black people,
Right.
they'd be in prison.
Absolutely. If we said, let's resist blackness in 2019, what would we be called?
It's reverse discrimination.
Right? And if you're black, or if you have any color other than white, and white is a color,
I don't
can't
like
speak.
Meghan Markle made a speech and said, I'm a woman of color.
I saw that.
Said, excuse me,
Where?
everybody has a color, not just you.
And what about the color of that baby?
He's white as a snow.
Yeah. So,
he's whiter than me.
Yeah, he's very, very white. So something weird is going on with that little child. That's for darn sure. Okay, then this is another story which I've seen in the news quite a bit. They're talking about I think it's the Uyghurs over in China. Where
Uyghurs, yeah, I know them.
They've been harvesting their organs.
I met them in China.
They're harvesting their organs. Basically, they're saying that, basically they're killing them and harvesting their organs.
They're Muslims.
I know, dear. But my point being is it's on the news right now. So this story is very germane to what's happening. For whatever reason, this is actually happening in Phoenix. It's actually in Phoenix. It's actually as happened. I had an update just this morning on this story. Yeah. But there is a family who have it's a son and a brother who wound up with a drug overdose. And the man, I think he's around 30, he had signed the organ donor thing on the back of the driver's license, which we have the option here to do in the U.S. And I do not do that, I will tell you, because I don't want them harvesting my organs, period.
But I'm going to take them for you. Don't worry.
Well, actually, I'm just going to morph into another reality. But anyway, he had signed it. He was a legal adult. The family said he's not dead. The hospital in Phoenix issued a death certificate saying he's dead from the head up, but the rest of him is alive.
So he's brain dead.
That's what they called him. But the family said that he's not dead and he's not in a coma state. And they wanted to bring in an outsider neurologist to verify that that he's not dead. But they have 5 people waiting for his organs. So
that makes sense then.
The Donor Network of Arizona was fighting this legally because he said time is of its essence. We want to take him off of life support so we can harvest his organs. And the family says, no, he's not dead. We talked to him. He has tears running down his face. That he's responding to us.
He's not dead.
So they filed to have somebody come from outside of the hospital system to say he's not dead because they don't want them to take the son.
I hope they won.
They did not.
What?
I don't know what happened because I didn't get all of it, but they said the judge ordered that they're waiting for an expert to come from outside of the system. Then they said he had to come from within the system, and now I just heard today that the young man is now been taken off life support and is technically dead.
Well, that judge should be guilty of murder.
Yeah, but then the family is saying we love him, we don't want to lose him, and that basically they were forced because people were waiting for the organs.
I'd sue them for $1 quadrillion.
So I don't know what's going on here with this, but I never liked this idea anyway. But the life support was removed. He's officially dead.
That's a shame.
So, anyways, to me, it's a very scary thing that happened. So, and speaking of scary things, but not to us, alien life.
Well, we are alien life.
Everybody here is alien life. Alien life may be hidden on the moon because it acts like a fishing net to trap interstellar objects, a Harvard scientist said. He says that impacts of interstellar objects may have embedded clues from deep space. That the moon's surface has probably held clues for billions of years, and there's probably proof that extraterrestrial life may be a lot closer to home than most would imagine. He published this op-ed in Scientific American. Theoretical physicist and Harvard professor Abraham Lieb, I think we've heard that name before, and he said that this could potentially provide information on building blocks of life from the habitable environments around other stars. And he says because the moon is geologically inactive, that the surface would retain any intriguing interstellar clues brought about by anything that comes into contact with the moon's surface.
Especially since it's a fake object.
And he says that the moon is kind of like a mailbox for objects flying around our solar system. This next one was even
More like a garage.
more interesting because he says this last statement was recent evidence shows that interstellar travelers in our neck of the galaxy may be a lot more common than previously thought.
We always see them.
Now, NASA is having an Artemis mission to the moon. And Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo. We talk a lot about twins in this, I think this book particularly, King Bee, Queen Bee. I'm going to read that one. So Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo and goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. So NASA is using that name to personify its path back to the moon, which they will return to the moon in 2024. And what was most fascinating to me was that it's going to be a 3-week mission. There's that number 3.
There we go.
And what was even more fascinating is by the year 2028, NASA intends to have a sustainable human presence on the moon as a result of the Artemis mission.
Too late, already there.
They said that this colony will uncover new scientific discoveries, demonstrate new technological advances, and lay the foundation for private companies to build a lunar economy. 2028 at this point is not that far away, and you know how they do, they just bring the dates back until, it's already there. Like
we already have a loony economy.
Yeah, so anyway, so that I thought was a very fascinating story, so.
Yes, it's very fascinating.
Lots of fascinating stories. So we want to thank you for joining us. Remember to get your membership on expansions.com. That's where we do Q&As, not on YouTube, not on Facebook. That's where you can get a really great member special combo deal, which will be out actually in just a couple of days by October 1. So if you don't have the member combo, you can still get a member discount, but that's our super, super duper member special, our new Ohio Council.
Sign up for the January class. October 7th, I have my webinar in Quito in English and Spanish. It's on the website. Sign up.
Remember our self-healing webinar, which will
begin in October.
Yes, in October.
All on the website.
So
As we gotta go.
comment, subscribe, share.
Bye for now.
Bye.